Hi, and thank you for joining me. In today's video, we're going to take on a very light project. We're going to create a load balancer between two web servers. Now let's take a look at this diagram we have here. Here we have the users that will access the load balancer through the domain name www.techstory.local, and at that point the load balancer will use round robin algorithm to randomly choose between the two web servers which will have a duplicate web page. Now before we get started, if this is your first time visiting the channel, please do consider subscribing. Now let's get started. Now here I have my VMware Workstation. Now just to name the prerequisites for this project, you will need to have a DNS server. I'm using Windows Server for this. You will also need to have 3 Linux machines. Here I'm using Debian. You can use similar steps if you're using Ubuntu as well. Now I'm expecting that you have a static IP address on all your virtual machines and that they all are on the same subnet, or if they're not, they have proper routing in place to reach each other. Now the first thing we will do is to set up Apache on both web servers. And here I have SSH into my web server 1 or web 1, and the first thing we will do is to update the current software that exists on the web server, and to do so I will write sudo apt-y update. Now this is just a good practice to do before installing any app. Now to install the Apache server, I will write sudo apt-y install Apache 2. Now the same thing can be done using Nginx or whatever web server you prefer. And even if you have IIS, you can still use HAProxy to load balance between your two IIS servers. Now we have installed the web server. Now to test this, I will type 10.10.10.189, which is the IP address for the server that is web 1. Hit enter, and there we go. Here is the Apache server. Now let's do the same with web 2 or the other web server. SSH, I'm going to SSH into that. User 1 is the name of my user, and the IP address for that is 10.10.10.190. There we go. Now let's update. You can upgrade as well, but I'm not going to do that for now. To install, we will type sudo apt-y install and Apache 2. And again, you can use whatever web server you like. Fantastic. And that's all we're going to do here. Now let's test this. We will write 10.10.10.190. And there we go. We have both servers up and running. Now let's move on to our front end or load balancer. I'm going to SSH into that. It's also user 1 at 10.10.10.191. Fantastic. And the name of the server is www. Now let's install HAProxy. Sudo apt-y update first. Fantastic. And sudo apt-y install HAProxy. There we go. Fantastic. With that done, let's go to the HAProxy configuration file and add the information for both the front end and the back end. I will type sudo nano etc HAProxy haproxy.cfg. I will remove what I already have. I added new configuration. There we go, and I will paste my configuration. Now let's take a look at this. In the beginning, I'm using front end or the keyword front end to define that this will be my front end, and I'm naming this HTTP front. You can name it whatever you want. I am binding to port 80, and I am stating that the default backend that I will be using is the one that is named server group. You can name this whatever you want, just make sure it's the same name you're using here. Afterwards, I'm using the keyword backend, then defining my backend group. I'm defining that I will balance using the algorithm round robin, and I'm defining both my servers. Here's the first server, which is web1.techstory.local, and here's the IP address, and in the end I'm adding port 80, which means HTTP. After that, I have the word check which will check the health of the server before actually loading the web page from there. If there's a problem with the health check, then it will go to the next server. Now let's save this, clear. Let's restart the HAProxy server. Service HAProxy restart. Fantastic. Now let's go to each web server and change the HTML to be a little different. I will pause the video and I will come back with the HTML code that we will paste in the index file. Fantastic. Now here I have two HTML versions of the same file. The first one is server 1, the second one is server 2. I have the same header, this is the web page. The only difference here is the style here is blue, or the font will be blue. Here the font will be green. Fantastic. Now let's test the load balancer. I will paste the IP address for the load balancer here, which is 191. Hit enter. And here we can see this is server 1 and the color is green as we did the index. Do a refresh. Here we get server 2, server 1, server, and so on and so forth. Now just a heads up, because I had this problem, make sure that your IP address is correct for both servers, because I had the IP address wrong, so the testing was not working correctly. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed this, and if you did, please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.